Today we're talking about minerals and how they're different from rocks. So let's start. What exactly is a mineral? Well, a mineral is a naturally occurring inorganic object. I don't know what that means. Well, let's start with naturally occurring. It's something that's found on Earth naturally, things on the ground. And inorganic just means it's not alive or never has been alive. So another thing that you need to know about a mineral is they're made up of a common group of molecules or atoms. So let's take salt, for example. This is something everyone knows. Salt is made up of sodium chloride. So you take the atoms of sodium and the atoms of chlorine and put them together and you get sodium chloride. So all salt is made up of sodium chloride, and that is a mineral. So what's the difference between a mineral and a rock? Well, rocks are made up of minerals. If you put several different minerals together, that forms a rock. So let's think of it this way. Let's think of granite. Take a look at the piece of granite over here to the left. Do you notice or to the right, I'm sorry. Do you notice all of the different specks? Well, those are all different minerals. So let's say you take some feldspar, which I have some green clay, and you take some mica, and you take some quartz, which are all individual minerals, and you mix them up. Granite is a metamorphic rock, and over the time with the heat and the pressure, you can see it forms something that no longer is green or yellow or red. It's kind of a mixture of both, and you can see all the different pieces in there. So another analogy I like to think about is a cake. I spent a lot of time thinking about cake. You think of the sugar and the salt and the flour and the eggs. Those are kind of like the minerals. Those are the separate ingredients. And when you mix them together and you bake them together, you get a birthday cake. So a cake or a rock is a mixture of different types of minerals. The properties of minerals. How can we tell these different minerals apart? Well, there's several different tests that you can perform. Let's start with one of the easiest ones, and that's color. Color is, if you look at, I have two separate minerals here, you can easily see one has a gold color while one has a blue color. Another test is a luster. Luster is basically how shiny. Here I got some pyrite. You can see it's kind of gold, it's kind of shiny, and I have my granite over here. It's got little specks of shine in it, but I also have some quartz, which is glassy luster. You can see how it kind of looks like glass. Glass is made out of quartz. And I have another rock over here. You can see it's kind of dull. It's not very shiny at all. Another test to perform is a streak test. Now this looks a lot like gold, and if it were gold, I could perform a test on a piece of equipment called a streak plate. If I were to rub gold across a streak plate, it would leave a gold streak, proving that it's gold. So this is something that's called pyrite. It's also called fool's gold, and you can see why. If I give it a rub on my streak plate, it's not gold. It's grayish, greenish streak. So this proves that this is not real gold. It's fool's gold. It's something called pyrite. Another test to perform is something called a hardness test. You use a series of different objects that are, some are harder than others, like you have some copper or an iron nail or a piece of glass, and you scratch the mineral across the object to see if it leaves a scratch. If it does, you move on to the next one until you get all the way up to the hardest thing. Some rocks, like this one here, is very, very soft. I can even scratch it with my finger. You can see it's coming off on my finger. So this one would be a very soft rock, while other rocks, like my granite, I can scratch the copper. You can see the scratch marks on the copper, and I can keep going down the list. Another physical property that we can test for is something called cleavage. Some minerals break along particular lines. For example, calcite. Take a look over here to your right. This is a picture of calcite. If you notice, there's a big chunk of calcite with a bunch of smaller pieces of calcite. And if you notice, they all look very similar in shape. That's because calcite breaks along very particular lines. So when you break a piece of calcite, the littler pieces look like the bigger pieces. So to review, a mineral is a naturally occurring object found on Earth that is made up of a particular group of atoms. Now, the difference between a mineral and a rock is that rocks are made of minerals. When you take several different minerals and you mash them together like this clay, you get a rock. And each mineral, which there's over 4,000 of them, have their own physical properties, such as hardness, streak color, cleavage, and luster.